This fruit has been sitting on my counter for 4 months. No fridge, no wrapping, no preserving. It's still firm, still good, still edible. A tomato from the same garden would have been composted by week 2. I want to show you the plant that made it, because it's not some exotic thing you need a greenhouse for. It's growing in a regular backyard, and it's been producing continuously for 3 years without being replanted once. I found this plant about 6 months ago while trying to solve a pretty frustrating problem. Every summer I grow tomatoes. Every summer they do okay, not great, not bad, just okay. And every autumn I pull them out, bag them up, start the whole thing again in spring. Same cost, same effort, same reset. I've done that for years, and I just started wondering at some point whether the whole annual replanting model is actually the most sensible approach or whether it's just the one everyone defaults to because it's what they've always done. So I started looking at perennial food plants, things that don't die at the end of the season, and most of what I found was fine. Berry bushes, asparagus, artichokes, useful stuff, but nothing that felt like a real replacement for the tomato, which is basically the backbone of everything I cook. Then I came across something called a tamarillo, tree tomato, and my first reaction was, yeah, that sounds made up, like something someone names a plant to make it sound more impressive than it is. But I kept reading, and the numbers kept getting harder to ignore. If you want more content like this, weird plants, underrated methods, stuff that actually works in a real backyard and not just on paper, you can subscribe. I put these out fairly regularly. Okay, back to the tamarillo. One mature tamarillo tree, 20 to 30 kilograms of fruit per year for up to 12 years from a single planting. I read that 3 times because it seemed wrong, like a number someone inflated to make a point. But that's documented yield from agricultural research programs that were specifically studying it as a food security crop, not marketing copy, not a seed catalog claim. Before I get into the numbers, quick thing, the plant originates in the Andes. It's been a food staple in South America for centuries under the name tree tomato or chilto. Most people in North America and Europe have genuinely never seen one in person. That's not because it's difficult or obscure, it's just never been pushed into mainstream gardening culture here. That gap is kind of the whole story. For context, a really good tomato season from one indeterminate plant gets you maybe 5 or 6 kilograms. Then it's done. You get 1 shot per year, and the clock starts running from the moment the first fruit ripens. The tamarillo sits at somewhere between 4 and 6 times that yield, from something you only plant once. The 12-year lifespan is the productive period before yield starts dropping, not when it dies. Some growers push well past that with basic pruning, and because it fruits on new wood, a decent prune after harvest actually encourages the next flesh, rather than reducing it. So the more you maintain it, the longer and harder it produces. Now, the storage. This is the part I couldn't get past when I first read it. Fresh tamarillo stores for up to 6 months at room temperature. No refrigeration, no processing. You pick it and it just holds. The thick, waxy skin is basically a natural seal. It slows down ripening to the point where the fruit just waits for you.
Anyone who's grown tomatoes seriously knows the harvest crunch problem. They all come at once. You're looking at 40 tomatoes ripening in the same week, and suddenly you're making sauce at 11 at night because if you don't process them right now, they're going to split and go soft, and you're going to lose half of them. Every year, same thing. Tamarillo spreads the harvest out. The fruit ripens in waves across a long window rather than all at once. And once you pick it, the 6-month shelf life means you're not racing anything. You use it when you actually want to, when you have time, when you're ready, when it fits into your week. That's a completely different kind of abundance, one you're in control of rather than one that's controlling you. And that shift feels surprisingly significant once you experience it. Let's talk about flavor, because this is always the first question, and it deserves a real answer. It's not a tomato. It's close, same family, similar savory, sweet range, but it's sharper, more acidic when raw. There's a faint tropical note underneath that you don't get from a tomato. The flesh is dense, and the seed jelly in the center is a bit like a passion fruit consistency. The skin is bitter, and you don't eat it. You score it, blanch it briefly, and it peels off in about 30 seconds. Once you're past the skin, the flesh is genuinely versatile. Salsas, chutneys, pasta sauces, curries, smoothies. People sub it directly into tomato-based recipes with solid results. The flavor is a bit more intense, so you sometimes use slightly less than you would tomato. Nutritionally, it punches well above a standard tomato. Higher vitamin C, significant vitamin E, good iron levels for a fruit, and strong antioxidant content from the anthocyanins. Those are the pigments giving it the deep red color. It's not a superfood marketing angle. Those are just what the nutrient test results show. So why does nobody grow this? That's the question I kept circling back to. You've got a plant that outproduces tomatoes by a significant margin, doesn't die at the end of the season, stores for half a year at room temperature, and is nutritionally denser. And yet, you can walk into any mainstream garden center and find 40 tomato varieties and maybe one tamarillo if you're lucky. Part of it is commercial logic. Annual plants generate repeat business. Seeds every spring, seedlings every spring, soil, amendments, fertilizers, the whole cycle resets and you buy in again every year. A plant you put in the ground once and harvest from for 12 years without repurchasing anything, that's not a great business model for the people selling you plants. That's just reality. Part of it is also the subtropical reputation. Tamarillo gets labeled as a warm climate plant, and people in cooler regions assume it's not for them. That label is outdated. It handles light frost. It grows well in large containers, which means you can bring it inside during the coldest weeks. There are people growing and fruiting it in the UK, in Canada, in the northern US states. The climate barrier is much smaller than the reputation suggests. Container growing deserves its own mention because it genuinely changes who can grow this. A 15 to 20-gallon pot is enough for a full-sized productive tree. Apartment balconies, small patios, rooftop gardens. The assumption that you need a big yard doesn't hold with this one. The size barrier people imagine around tree fruits mostly doesn't exist with this one. Timeline is the other objection people raise. From seed, you're looking at 18 months to first fruit. And yeah, that sounds like a lot up front. I get it. But frame it correctly. You're planting something that will produce for 12+ years. The 18-month wait is less than 15% of the productive lifespan. And think about the alternative. You'll spend more total time replanting annual tomatoes over the next decade than you will ever waiting for one tamarillo to hit its stride. The front end is slow. Everything after that runs itself.
The faster route is a grafted cutting from a nursery. You can be picking fruit within 6 to 8 months from a decent established cutting. That's genuinely comparable to starting tomatoes from seed in late winter and not harvesting until late summer. The timeline argument basically disappears if you start from a cutting rather than from seed, and most specialty nurseries carry them. Growing requirements are simpler than most tree fruits. Full sun preferred but tolerates partial shade. Consistent watering but with good drainage. It doesn't like wet feet. Light feeder compared to tomatoes, which want constant fertility inputs. The one thing it genuinely needs is wind protection, because mature branches can be brittle. A fence, a wall, a hedgerow nearby, anything that breaks direct wind. Pests and disease are where it really separates from tomatoes. No blight, no septoria, no fusarium wilt, none of the fungal diseases that can wipe out an entire tomato crop and leave you with nothing to show for a full season of work. Aphids and whitefly can appear in some climates, but both are manageable with basic organic sprays. Nothing specialized, nothing expensive. I've watched tomato crops fail completely to late blight. I've read through hundreds of grower reports on tamarillo and haven't found a single equivalent story of a healthy, established tree being wiped out by disease. That's a meaningful difference. Height is the one management task you can't skip. Left completely unpruned, a tamarillo can push up to 4 or 5 meters, and at that height, harvesting becomes a ladder operation, and wind damage risk goes up significantly. Keep it under 2 meters with one solid post-harvest prune, and both problems go away. It responds well to being cut back, doesn't sulk, doesn't stall. Prune it, it pushes new growth produces the next fruit. That's the whole cycle. Have you ever actually eaten a tamarillo or seen one in person? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious, because every time I mention this plant to someone who gardens, they look at me like I made it up. I want to know how common that reaction actually is. Red, orange, and yellow varieties exist, and they're not interchangeable.
Red is more acidic and savory, better for cooking, sauces, chutneys. Orange and yellow are milder and sweeter, better fresh or in smoothies. Red also stores longer at room temperature. If you're starting with one plant and you want maximum versatility, red is the one to go with. It handles cooking and fresh eating, and it holds the longest. Something I didn't expect to find while researching: tamarillo has been specifically studied for food security programs in multiple countries because of the combination of high yield, long productive lifespan, low inputs, and that storage stability. It checks boxes that most annual crops simply don't. It can be grown by people with very little land, very little budget, and very little technical knowledge. When agricultural researchers are taking a plant seriously as a survival-level food source for vulnerable communities, not as a niche garden curiosity, that's a signal worth paying attention to. The maintenance load comparison with tomatoes is worth being specific about. Tomatoes want you constantly: nitrogen early on, then switch to potassium and phosphorus once flowers appear. Deep watering every 2 or 3 days. Stake them, tie them, sucker them if they're indeterminate. Watch for early blight, late blight, mosaic virus, calcium deficiency, end rot. They're productive, but they're demanding. Tamarillo, once established, basically asks for 3 things per year: water when the soil gets dry, a light feed twice annually with a balanced, slow-release fertilizer, and 1 prune after the main harvest to keep height manageable and encourage new fruiting wood. That's the full annual maintenance schedule. Everything else it handles on its own. For anyone who wants meaningful food production without building a second job around it, the difference in time cost between this and tomatoes is real, and it compounds every single season. Propagation from cuttings is something worth knowing, because once you have one plant, getting more costs almost nothing. Semi-hardwood cuttings taken in late summer root at about 60 to 70% success with basic rooting hormone. One purchased plant becomes 3 or 4 within 2 seasons. At that point, you've effectively made the original cost irrelevant. Let me be accurate about the year-round production claim, because I want to be precise about it. In mild climates, without hard frost, parts of California, the Pacific Northwest, most of the UK, the tree produces across 2 distinct flushes, with fruit available for most of the calendar year. In colder climates, with a container plant, you're working with a long productive season, not literally 12 months. Still, significantly longer than any annual tomato. But I'd rather tell you that now than have you disappointed in February. One thing I came across in grower forums that I want to pass on: tamarillo seems to respond particularly well to companion planting at the base. Comfrey is mentioned most often. The deep roots pull up minerals, the leaves mulch down into the root zone, and multiple growers reported noticeably better fruit size and tree vigor with comfrey planted around the base versus bare soil. Low effort, free after the first plant, worth trying. I want to be honest about what I don't know yet. I haven't grown this for a full season myself. I'm planting one this spring, and I'll document everything that actually happens: real yield numbers, real maintenance time, whether any of the numbers from the research held up in a regular backyard with regular soil and regular weather. No cleanup of the results. Whatever happens, that's what I'll show you. If you want to see how this plays out in a real garden rather than on paper, that one's worth subscribing for, because that's where the research either proves itself or it doesn't. See you there.